Welcome back to another episode of Integrate Yourself. We're your hosts, Allison Pillow and Maya Gottlieb. You can find me, Allison, at pureenergypdx.com, and you can find Maya at mayagottlieb.com. You can find our YouTube channel under Allison Pillow. It's the Integrate Yourself YouTube channel, and we're doing it together now. So we're going to be also adding videos for movement, and also possibly some cooking videos, or some just videos about nutrition aside from the podcast. So definitely look out for that. Maya will be also adding some things about neuroscience and all kinds of interesting things that you can do with your body to get your nervous system and your alignment back on track. Okay, so we have a hodgepodge of things going on today. Lots of different topics, but we did get into some neuroscience and how the brain works, how the brain functions best, as well as defining your purpose and how the purpose really is related to your integration process, which was really interesting.
We also talked about how the science is still being interpreted by people in different ways, that we need to kind of be our own researcher and find things that work for us in ways that maybe we want to work with our doctors and help them educate them, as well as them being part of our community and consultants. We also talked about the part about pharmaceuticals still taking their reins on how people are getting information, how they basically are dependent, making people dependent on their drugs, and how we offer solutions to give people their choices back.
And I'm going to say also, if you guys want to support this podcast, we'd love it if you head on over to our affiliate links. We have 2 affiliate links. We have one for Thrive Market, which if you become a member today and you do a 30-day trial membership, you get 20% off your order if you go through our affiliate link on pureenergypdx.com. I'll also leave a link underneath this video as well. We talked about mushrooms on this show and how beneficial they can be for the liver and for the detoxification process. Anything to add to that, Maya, about mushrooms?
How they can help support your immune system, in our situation, reduce cancer, and give you an option to know that there are alternatives to how your body works.
And Four Sigmatic is a company that we've been affiliated with for a couple of months now, and I've been really happy with their product. They have a process of taking different kinds of mushrooms for different kinds of issues and putting them into things like coffee and elixirs. And the thing that I've been really actually, I'm going to try the other stuff, but I've been really loving the hot cacao mushroom mix. And it's been really great to just put into my milk and add it to that. I can either add it into hot or cold milk. If that's not your thing, you can try their coffee mushroom mix as well as their elixir mushroom mix, and they're all really wonderful. It's a great company to try. They have a wonderful product, and I highly recommend. So if you want to go to our Four Sigmatic affiliate link, just head on over to, again, our website, pureenergypdx.com. You can find the banner there, click on that, and you can enter our code Integrate Yourself, and you'll get 10% off your order today, and that will support our podcast, and we would appreciate it so much. I did want to talk a little bit about what we talked about on Saturday, about the brain reprogramming, the neuroscience that we kind of got into. And you're talking about how there are 2 parts of the brain that needed to work together for reprogramming, basically. So if you're trying to make a change, if you're trying to
the cerebellum.
or habit,
The cerebellum being the part of integration.
Right. Integration is the word, right? So I thought that was really interesting. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, a lot of this comes from Dr. Cobb from Z Health, and he talks about how like the first brain really takes over everything because it's a survival mechanism. And if you look at the brain in terms of how it sits and stuff, it sits way in the back, right? Right where the occiput, back by the base of the head. And that's where the cerebellum sits, right? So the cerebellum is like an interpreter of information and says, hey, you guys I've got to make sure that we're surviving, and anything else after that, we can say it's okay. So that's the basic integration. And as the energy is flowing through your system, so like you're fueling yourself, your fueling is got to go through that part of the brain to the frontal cortex, which is the part of the front of the brain right where your eyebrows are. And so when you start to cognitively, and that's the frontal brain is with the cognitive. So if you think about what's happening in the front brain, that's decision making and how to choose things and do things. So that information comes back and forth between the brains to say, hey, is this safe? Yes. Okay, then let's make a choice based on the knowledge of what we have. But if you don't have enough energy flowing through the front of the brain, you're actually not making wise decisions because you're still in the threat situation. The body is saying, we don't have enough. We don't have enough to share to get that energy to you. So we're just going to keep you from moving forward and allowing you to do anything that's stupid.
So would a good example be like lack of glucose in the diet? We could
Yeah,
cause that.
absolutely. Absolutely, because it's the part that utilizes the most, your eyes, your brain, all that is the easiest form that it can utilize. It's so the simple sugar basically that goes into the brain and helps the brain function.
Cool. Yeah, that's amazing, actually.
Yeah,
So,
it is way amazing. Like, because
so if we don't have enough fuel, it's not gonna be easy to willpower ourselves through a change or on a wellness level or even like a belief system level, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's the foundation there. Like that's going to be really hard. And that's why I think people just stop. They start off doing something, but then they stop because they don't even have the energy to keep going. And then there's a lot of self criticism around that. But I think that the key could just be to make sure you're fueling yourself properly. Then you could actually make those changes.
right. And so think about then the dogma that's been out there that if you over exceed your calories, which, you try to explain people like the basal rate and all that, and like your survival amount of calories, and that's like for your body just to function, sleeping, right? Like it's
Right.
not doing much. But then if you take into effect that people don't even see how much energy it takes to go drive a car, go to the store, get groceries, come back, unload them. That doesn't count to them as stress or a workout. That to them is just what I should be doing. Well, yeah, if you had a functioning liver and everything's working really well and you got, glycogen that can be working through your body, and it's not starting out on half a tank, but most of the people who end up with that kind of idea of restricted dieting. So I don't want to exceed the calorie intake. I'm going to hold back my calories because I don't want to gain weight. They're really just holding back the functioning of the brain. Like you can't give any more to the brain because it's going to the heart, it's going to everything that it needs to keep your heart to beating. What you're asking the body to do is not have enough to function throughout the
Right.
day.
Right.
But my society tells me calories in, calories out. Oh, okay. Well, I need to work off 500 calories that I ate today at one meal because I ate too much or whatever, based on I'm supposed to have 1,200 calories for a woman at whatever they say on those charts, right? That doesn't account for your stress in your life.
Yeah.
We have so much going on in our lives that takes energy and cognitive energy. Like my eyes looking forward and around and seeing things that are coming into my vision when I'm driving, the concentration, screen, looking at computers but I feel like that is the biggest issue is that if we're talking about how the brain needs something that's easy for the body to function, like sugar,
Hmm.
you're then telling people don't have a lot of sugar. It's bad to have sugar.
Yeah.
Be afraid of sugar. Fruit is okay, but don't go too much, especially in the elderly population. They're afraid of diabetes, right? So these
Right.
all
Well,
these
that is, I think, has what scared people most is the diabetes talk when,
yeah.
it actually doesn't make sense.
And
It's,
in the interim is that we see more dementia, more Alzheimer's.
yeah.
All this stuff is showing up, but there's no connection to the fact that sugar was demonized. There's absolutely no way of saying, well, maybe we were wrong and you do need to have sugar because we have studies that show your brain works off of sugar.
Yeah. And if you don't have enough sugar, then your brain doesn't function as well.
Right, because you can't. There's
No.
no way to
I
work.
mean, it's going to keep you alive. It's going to keep you functioning to some extent. Like you're going to be able to talk and walk and do everything you need to do. But
Yeah, but
as far as like
where's it coming from?
articulation and actually, yeah, right. Like if you want to do other things, if
If
you
you're
want to
not
be active,
ingesting it, it's coming from somewhere else. It's coming
yeah,
from your muscles.
right.
It's coming from your tissues. And it's breaking it down because the body will get what it needs.
Yeah, yeah. Women like when they're older lose muscle mass because of this very reason. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And then think about all these women that are considered hysterics, that hysteria, that part, that dogma of being overly emotional. And the limbic system is part of that part of the brain that needs its information to say, hey, you're safe, you don't need to emotionally be afraid, because emotions are based on fatigue. Basically,
yeah.
you're fatigued, you start to worry and start to have imagination brings the
Right.
fears come in and you start to believe them.
And
Then they
anxiety, and it's just a vicious circle.
all all played based on an idea of sugar is bad.
Isn't that crazy? And then and then people like eat a bunch of sugar, they binge on it, and then feel
Yes.
guilty
Oh,
afterwards. It's like this whole thing, like you could write a book about it, you know?
and then you're considered a weak person. You crave sugar.
Yeah.
Well, no, dear.
No, you actually
You're
need it.
you're not you're just not either
Whatever
timing it
happened to the
right.
old ladies with the candy jars? Remember the older women used to have like jars of
Yes.
candy in their house
Oh,
and just
because
sit
the
there.
generations that got into the health field started to point fingers at them
Oh,
and
right.
say, "That's terrible. You have candy. You're killing yourself. Don't you know sugar's bad for you? That is the worst. That's toxic. That is the worst thing for you." Well, no, you are actually self-medicating yourself with non-prescriptive drug. You are actually giving yourself the what you needed.
It's
Now,
kind of funny how we say, "Oh, sugar is so addictive and everything," and then we're giving people pharmaceuticals.
right.
Like, and we're like, "Oh, that's not as bad."
Well, then, or you get the people that are really health conscious and afraid of real processed sugar, right? So you go to the juicing, if you just juice everything, then you'll get sugar that way, and just do the healthy sugars and juice vegetables and juice this. Well, the problem is those are the polyunsaturated fats, which we are talking about in the vegetables. You got a couple of things. You've got an induced insulin rush because of the fact that you're drinking juice with no fiber. Then you are literally like taking in this at a meal's pace, right? So you're using this as a substitute for a meal. So then you take all this in this at one time. Now you're a bad glucose processor because you haven't been eating sugar for years. You start doing this, it gives you a high. You're like, oh yeah, I feel great. Yeah, because sugar, you needed the sugar. But then
Yeah.
you don't have anything else because you have a slow metabolism. Maybe your temperature and pulse are screwed up a little. And then you're sitting there trying to ingest all this stuff. Well, the only reason why most of them are feeling pretty good is because of the high, and then they're restricting the amount of calories they have. So then
Yeah.
you get that high, but then give yourself 6 to a year or more, depending on how bad your liver is, and you start to feel sluggish, you feel tired, you get brain fog, all these things start to come into play. But no, it's because you're eating processed sugars, and sugar is toxic.
Yeah, and of course, we always advocate starting with sugars from fruit. I think that's ideal because it's got the fiber, it's also got all the other nutrients, but you can use processed sugar therapeutically. That is a thing.
Yes.
So again, a therapeutic way would be slow, and if someone would need that kind of thing, because not everybody needs that kind. That would be more in kind of I would say, an emergency case, or somebody's thyroid severely low, right? And brain function.
Yeah, because you can't process much anyway. So
Yeah.
like, you
So the more
know,
processed, the better, actually, in some cases. I hate to say that. Of course, you wouldn't want to have something with a bunch of dyes and other things in it, but maybe straight like sugar cane or something wouldn't be a bad thing for someone
yeah, or
if they're going
honey,
through that. Yeah, honey's great because it has
maple
other
syrup,
minerals in it. Yeah, exactly.
you know, but you use these as sipping things. You don't use them as a whole meal to kind of take over something. Like,
Yeah,
unless you're going to do some kind of energetic exercise or your endurance or something like that, where you need something to replenish something really quickly. But typically, you use these as like interims between the times that you're not eating meals,
to keep
or
your
you,
blood sugar up.
right, or think of it as a triage. But most people don't see themselves as that severe. They just think
Yeah.
everything's not connected.
Yeah. Well, that's because everybody's told that that sugar is bad. That's the only thing that people are hearing right now.
Yeah, and that's all they're promoting. I mean, I see it all over Facebook. Sugar bad. It it works for a while for a lot of people,
Yeah.
and then stories after stories, people are starting to kind of have to come to the fact that certain things aren't working for them.
Yeah, and you can speak to that because you were a vegan for a while and you were an athlete.
Yeah, I tried that. That was an interesting prospect. I mean, I can tell you I leaned out. Yeah, I definitely leaned out, but my I could see some things start to deteriorate that I look back now and I think, "Oh, yeah, I didn't have a lot of muscle mass, but I was also doing endurance." So I could hide the fact that I didn't have a lot of muscle mass, because endurance racing is going to do the same thing. High cortisol, it's going to take away. But I think the only thing that really saved me was that ability to know how to recover. Like, I was diligent about my workouts and eating, and not
Yeah.
restricting my diet. I didn't do that part.
I have to
um
say that's what saved me as being a gymnast and working out as much as I worked out, like 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. I, the only thing that did same for me, like how I recovered. I would sleep like in the middle of the day, I'd take a long ass nap,
yep.
and I would eat like crazy.
Hmm.
And that's the
Absolutely.
only way I actually survived that. Um,
Yeah, which
yeah,
is exactly what you have to do, because if you
yeah,
don't, your body's going to take it from your body, and that means injuries. That's going to be
yeah,
a problem with immune issues, because you get sick a lot more because your system is running low. It doesn't have enough of the, you get the so-called adrenal fatigue. So many of us can say, well, these are the reasons. It has nothing to do with the fact that my body wasn't getting enough of what it needed to work on its own and do what it needed to do.
yeah. And I think I think as an athlete too, and you can relate to this as well. When you stop doing as much athletics as you were doing, it kind of bring down the notch of the activity. You have that fear that you're going to gain weight, so you bring your calories back a substantial amount, right? Which,
Hmm.
I mean, it kind of makes sense because you're trying to recalibrate everything. What happened with me is, I think after my second child, I wanted to lose all the weight really quickly. So I
Mm.
did. I totally dialed it back way too much. I was under eating. So I ended up really putting myself into more of a nutrient
Mm.
deficiency place. So that was, I mean, I look back on that, and having 2 kids, that takes a lot of nutrients out of your body too, and then I was on top of that cutting my calories, and I was running every day.
Mm.
Yeah, that was not a good idea.
And then, I mean, I don't remember if you remember how tired you were, how frustrated you were. Were what was going on in your life at that time? I mean, I remember being so just emotionally drained
Yeah,
because I was emotional.
Yeah.
And then I would be frustrated as heck, right?
Yeah.
Like, I just, I mean, but I still push myself, I'd still be that person that would go out and live a normal life, even though I did 100 miles that morning. You're just like, well, gotta get that, gotta go out and do, be social. But you can't eventually, after a while, you just don't have it. You gotta,
Right.
and if you remember, like, collegiate or even kind of Olympians, there's not much of a social life. You don't have the bandwidth for that.
Didn't have any social life. I
And I
mean,
remember
teammates
what,
and that's it.
yeah, and remember Brian Thomas saying, he started to realize how much more isolated he liked being. Like, I don't want to be around
It's
people,
true. Yeah,
you
that's
know?
true. You do get comfortable in that space, right? You don't want to go outside of that box.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you're so easily triggered. You're so ready
Yeah.
to, like, snap at somebody or cry with somebody.
Yeah.
And I think I was telling you this story about, there is people on YouTube, talking about their revelation of using what's called Pavlik shockers. You put them the
Oh,
wrist, you put them around your wrist, and you shock yourself. So the reason being is because it's going to help, like the Pavlok dogs, where he would ring the bell and the dog would salivate when
yeah.
food came. When then he didn't have to bring the food out, they would salivate anyways. So the idea is, well, I'm going to put myself under shock whenever I want sugar. So I'm going to take myself into this experiment to prove to myself that I don't need sugar. So basically, they shock themselves every time they eat something bad or with sugar.
Wow.
Then you shock yourself, and after a while you don't want the food because it's painful. Yes, that's
Of
exactly
course.
how it works. You
Yeah.
you know there's no trick to this. But the thing, what happens is they get this feeling of success, and then they get this idea, okay, I feel a lot better, I don't have sugars in my body. Well, first take the fact, is it processed sugars? Did you have something that wasn't considered
What
a
kind of
bad
sugar?
sugar? Yeah,
Right.
like, if I'm eating a pie, is also factors of the gluten that's kind of in there that might be
Starch.
affecting the starch, whatever's in there, right? The carrageenan, maybe, I don't know what you got
So many
in it.
things. Yes.
Right. So
When
you
you get into that kind of sugar, that's really, there can be so many factors with that one.
Right. So then you take that factor out, right?
Yeah.
But they still believe, because they stop all sugars, that it's okay, but what happens is that their body is doing exactly what it's going into I think it's the Randall cycle, right? Where they're going to fat burning, right?
Hmm.
So then they get that extreme, like, adrenaline rush, because they're constantly getting, their system is running off of them,
Yeah, because
you
they're getting
know
shocked, right? Like,
well, yeah, not the shocking, but, like, the sugars are broken
oh, well,
down,
that
and
too. Yeah, because that's it. You're saying that's after effects of like
yeah,
adrenaline keeps running after that. Yeah.
and then that you're becoming a fat burner.
Yeah.
So, adrenaline's going through your body, you're feeling good, you're feeling refreshed, you're feeling like, yeah, because I remember, going on to these vegetarian diets or doing these you do feel euphoria. You're like, wow, I feel awesome.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what what was going on with my cellular being. My cellular being had no input to me in my physical being. I was clueless to what was going on.
Well,
So
isn't there
these
some chemical reaction or reason for people feeling really good when they do that kind of diet?
Yeah, the brain gets, um this is where I get kind of off in terms of the science, but, you got to look into the glucogenesis. You got to look into what happens with the Randall cycle to see why these other chemicals in your body start to influence you and give you that high instead, you know. And then when the body can't sustain that anymore, that's when these diets start to not be so great. And actually, a lot of people have gained weight on being a vegetarian after a while,
Oh yeah.
because they've been on the starvation part, right? Oh, I've starved myself by being a vegetarian, or I've starved myself from not having any sugar, into a certain point, right? And so, but to go back to being shocking yourself, like, I'm going to willpower myself into shocking myself from this bad addictive side of me because sugar is an addiction. And it's like, wow, you don't understand. You're driving your system through all these stress hormones, and that's how you're getting through this. It's not, it's
Yeah,
like,
it's a survival mechanism.
yeah, but induced pain.
Yeah,
Let me induce my own pain on myself because I believe I've got bad self will or
yeah,
power, you know?
yeah,
I'm like, wow, that's pretty barbaric in terms of like medieval style, right? We're lashing ourselves. We're doing things to
it,
kind of reinforce good habits, so called. But that's how, I mean, you
yeah.
can see now, like we know now, like how people are been suffering for years based on ideas of being too emotional. Well, it's not so much a psychological issue as maybe it's a low fuel energy issue
Yeah.
and a increase of estrogen as you get older.
Oh, yeah, and serotonin, right?
Oh yeah, because the idea of that serotonin was a good thing, that you needed it to be happy, and
But
but
those
it's
kind of diets actually up that. They actually increase the serotonin, which is not good, but it does make you feel good for a second, right?
right, and it comes from your gut, right? So you're inflamed, your digestion isn't working so well. So you think of all the women who've had gut issues, hormonal issues, and then they're emotional. It's like, whoa, okay.
It's like it's how their liver is functioning, it's how their brain is not getting enough energy. It all comes down to those physiological things, and people aren't putting them together, not even doctors, which is like crazy, right?
Mm-hmm. And so then you take into effect like people who aren't moving very well, right? Because they can't. They're so exhausted,
Yeah.
right? The rigidity is starting to set in. The lymph system isn't working very well. The swelling starts to get worse. They become more disconnected, right, from their
Yeah.
bodies. And then what happens? Then they're okay with surgeries, hysterectomies, removals of this and that, because the doctor says, well, that's, you're old, that's not going to get better, so you might as well just take that out.
But yeah, women who have had hysterectomies just because they want the organ out, or if the doctor recommends they do it and they think it's the right thing to do, and they think there's no repercussions from that. Like there's lots of repercussions from something like that, and on a hormonal level, actually you continue to produce more estrogen if you've had a hysterectomy, which I thought
Yeah.
was really interesting.
Well, I
But
I
they
notice.
don't know that. They're not told that.
Well, because the doctors may not even connect the dots that your pelvic floor is weakened. You have issues with your hormones, so it's not your diet. It's just it's you just have you have a bad uterus, so you might as well get rid of it. And I'm not saying like we to me is you never should get things removed, but what we do know is that certain things aren't really as black and white as the doctors make it sound. Like, you do need things because there is a communication to certain things. Now, and that's the hard part, is to kind of educate people to say, hey, have you ever thought of maybe that you may need that? You may still need it even though it's giving you problems, and let's see if we can kind of help you figure out what that would be if you were to look at it a different way, you know?
Absolutely. And I think also to consider that doctors don't get nutrition training and they don't get any training in movement and that kind of thing. Now, if you do trust your doctor and you want to, have them as an authority for you, then go to a doctor that has some training in nutrition, that has a nutrition background at least, and with
Mhm.
movement, because there's some out there that do have that. But you can't just go to a standard doctor if you're looking for a holistic way to go about it, and they're going to take it out because that's what they do.
Mhm. They're trying to save your life. I mean, doctors,
Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
not, yeah, as much as we talk about them, they're very helpful and they're not to be demonized. I mean, and no one is should just say never be heard to say don't go to your doctor." It's just that some things are out there about ways of healing yourself in a different way than maybe your doctor knows or has been open to it. And And you want to find someone who is open to seeing what they don't know, because
Right.
there's so much to still learn. And if your doctor is really dogmatic about keeping you on drugs, maybe look at it a little differently. Like, why am I supposed to be on this drug for the rest of my life? Why is this? Like, question it, because it's important.
Yeah, talk to your doctor about it for sure, and
And if your
understand.
doctor doesn't listen to you, you can find other doctors. It's out there.
There's tons of doctors out there, tons of great doctors that have a more holistic view, and I highly support those people because they are really helping a great deal
Mhm.
by doing that.
And find one that's willing to listen to what you provide them. If if they don't understand it, at least let them see if they can kind of say, "Hey, you know what? Thank you for bringing that information. When I get a chance, I'd really like to learn more about it, because, I still know that I'm not, even though I have my doctorate degree, I don't really know everything. And
Right.
I can't disprove that you fixed yourself through something else when I've tried everything with you the way I learned it.
Yeah.
Because some people come back to a doctor and they're like, um, this has gone away because I did this. And they're like, what?
Yeah. Quite
Like,
honestly, good doctors are happy about that kind of thing. They're like excited for people who can figure those things out, and they want to know who
right.
if you did go to see someone else, like who's a, a nutrition person or in that alternative field, who they were, and because they want to know so they can refer their patients to that person. But I think that doctors usually you'll know a good doctor when they support you in that process, and then they
Hmm.
also are, you can look at a doctor as a consultant, quite honestly, instead of an authority figure. And that's the
Yeah.
way I look to look at it. Like, this is someone who who is who I'm seeing as a consultant for my body, things that I might not be able to see. And I look
Hmm.
at all my practitioners that way: chiropractor, massage therapist, PT. They're all those are those people. They're just giving you insight on what's happening in your body, because it's really kind of impossible a lot of times to assess yourself, and that's why it's
Yes.
nice to have other people to help you out.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the same goes for your doctor. I mean, they don't, they're not necessarily authority figures. They're more like people who are helping you. You know.
Yeah. And that's the way it should be. Like,
Yeah.
I just remember, real quick, I'll tell you this. When Bosco, our pit bull, was diagnosed with tumors, we had ultrasounds, and he had one in his liver and one in his pancreas, and then like a couple others, and they were pretty big, and they were like, well, cutting them out or getting rid of them may be, hard, but that was what they suggested. And so Bob and I decided we're gonna, research mushrooms. We knew a lot more about it, and so we started taking, mushroom extract, turkey tail, which turkey tail you could find in your local forest. I mean, your woods out in back. Looks like a turkey fan of a tail, and that part of it, has been proven to show helping with cancer. And we gave him that, and we gave him some other concoctions of mushrooms, and he literally, those tumors went away, and he lived another 3 to 4 years. And these tumors were pretty impactful. They made him throw up. They were kind of forcing him to have hard breathing. And so this was like a really traumatic time for, us, because we kind of watched him suffering, and
Yeah.
and just to watch a simple extract of a mushroom that is outside of your door help him reduce those masses of tumors is like, wow, the body can really do a lot when you provide it with what it needs.
Yeah. It's kind of
And
amazing.
yeah, and so even influenced us more about, sorry about that.
Somebody's
Putt putt
coming in
putt
back.
putt agrees.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, so it's just crazy that these things don't get told more often.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but it's true. There
Well,
are
I mean, it makes
alternatives.
sense because, they're to be for something to be patented, they have to chemically derive it, correct? So, I mean, you can't do that with a lot of plants, you know?
No, and that's why they'll say, like, you're not allowed to take homeopathics when you're, having cancer treatments, because they don't know how it's going to affect the chemo. Well,
Oh,
chemo is a poison.
yeah.
So, yeah, it's going to do what it can to prevent the chemo from killing you.
Mm.
But that's a dogma, right? Chemo is more important than a natural substance that will reduce cancer and
Well,
help the body.
yeah, I think there's hopefully more research that's telling us that there are other ways to go about it.
Oh, well, then they'll pick
Yeah.
radiation, right? It's
Yeah.
either chemo or radiation is
Seems to
the
be
only way, or
the two
surgery.
ways. Yeah. Yeah. Or three. Yeah. And it seems still pretty barbaric to me, in my opinion. I think that I just watched this movie not too long ago called Heal. I was on a panel at my gym, Evolution Healthcare and Fitness. It was interesting. I liked the premise of it. It was about how the body has the ability to heal itself, and if we actually change our mindset about about our life and let go of these limiting beliefs and figure out kind of get to the heart of everything. But yet there was a woman was like, well, but I juice all the time. I go to yoga all the time and I still got cancer. And so again, people aren't putting these things together, even in this movie that's supposed to be really, I guess, pretty progressive in some ways. Right. But even that movie, like Deepak Chopra, people like that were in the movie, and very smart people, I guess, in Hollywood and stuff. But that's the thing, like people aren't putting together that lack of energy aspect to why we're getting sick, and it's still a mystery for many people why you would get cancer or something like that because they're not putting the sugar aspect of like sugar, the glucose metabolism aspect into the mix. They're not understanding that that's why you get cancer, because you can't metabolize sugar.
Right, because
you know
they don't want to connect it. I mean, it keeps the fear going, because even if a person that goes to yoga, does vegetarianism, cleans out their body, does really good breathing, meditation, all that stuff, still gets cancer, that means cancer is a disease that you're plagued by it when you get it, and you're fortunate to be a survivor because you've done all these things to help yourself. But when those things don't work, the cancer comes back. It baffles people, and it really makes them afraid of cancer even more. Like,
yeah.
it's not curable, it's not working, we need to keep doing research. And they won't listen to people who've studied it and said, well, it acts like a fungus, it actually does exactly what happens when fungus gets into your body, like candida and yeast infections and stuff like that.
Yeah.
People deprive themselves of sugar. Well, you keep depriving the body, those bacteria still come and search for that stuff. So they infiltrate your cell walls and go into your muscles, and then you have a larger yeast infection or something going on.
Yeah.
And it's all because you got told the sugar is bad for it. Well, what you didn't get told was you need to do it slowly. You need to make it balanced into your diet and change the way you're eating based on how you're living your life off stress. And that whole kind of thing keeps coming back around. That's got no connection. What are you talking about? Cancer is a disease that plagues us all. There's really needing more research of the same thing over and
Yeah.
over again.
It serves a lot of people to be a mystery, right? It serves a lot of
Oh,
people's
yeah.
pockets to be a mystery because they can keep studying it. But simply, I mean, I don't understand how people, I mean, if I can put this together, certainly people who are in science can put it together, like it
Yeah.
seems to be not that hard of a thing, right? But yet we're missing an obvious issue here, a state of metabolism. So my guess is if you were to raise your metabolism and keep it healthy and keep it up, like you're most likely not going to get something like cancer. And I think that's, I don't know, would
Well,
you agree with
that's
that?
yeah. But I mean, they have studies of people who live in higher altitudes, right?
Right,
That
right.
that less of that issue.
Yeah,
Well, there's also connection to the CO2 and O2 respiration and cellular mechanism. So, like, how your body functions in altitude is a totally different way for someone who lives on sea level. And when you think about how you change the cellular level, you are changing the way the body stresses are induced.
right.
So, you know, things that kind of keep coming up for people is they don't take it to a certain level of understanding, because no one wants to go back to their biology roots and start really studying that kind of stuff. And the only ones that are like us, who are kind of into the knowing of why things aren't working. And and that's the thing. It's like so many people are complacent because they're so fatigued. Well, why would anyone want to tell people how to fix themselves if they make money off of you?
Yeah. That's it. That's all we got. That's enough said right there. That is, yeah, I agree. I can't imagine anybody would. Yeah.
You can't, because, well, you can. I take that back. When you
I mean, if you
start
care about people, I guess you would, but
But they come back to work with you because you did help them,
yeah.
and you want to live life, and you're going to do things that you need a sounding board to somebody come back and say, okay, well, you just got off course, just do this, and you'll be all right. Instead of,
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be extreme, It doesn't have to be
yeah,
crazy, like juicing all the time, or actually that's worse. Like I consider that a cancer diet. Like it's gonna, because
it is.
once you
That's
have
how it came
cancer,
from.
yeah, once you have cancer, you do want to slow the metabolism down, right? Is
Yeah,
yeah,
that's what Ray was talking about. Like you certain times you do need to do these things, but in terms of why
but you
it
don't want to do it
was.
before. If you don't have cancer, you don't want to do that.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, you don't. It's like taking things out of context,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Or taking a cultural adaptation and saying, okay, I want to try it here. Like we talked about cold therapy, right?
right.
Like here are reasons for why certain cultures did certain things, and then we think, oh, that's the new trend. That if that helped them, it should help us. But we don't take the context. We don't take what happens when you look at all these things are different, and how it's going to vary. The variables are going to change when you try to induce it to yourself. So no one associates, yeah, that juicing and doing all that, there was a purpose for it. Like we talked about.
Like knowing your purpose, knowing the purpose of why you're doing something is going to help you integrate it, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Good memory.
Thank you.
Yeah, I
See,
mean,
I'm getting that sugar.
that cognitive brain is remembering stuff. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is like, I think that's where some of the biggest struggles are, is people are like, I can't find my purpose. Well, okay, well, yeah, maybe you're so fatigued you can't think about it, right? There's the fuel issue. Then you're living a purpose that you're not really sure, the science, the foundation, the whole ideas are true
Yeah,
for
exactly.
you,
Why you're doing it, basically, right?
or
Yeah,
where it came from.
right.
Why is it this?
Which is important.
Yeah, like, it's great to have something passed through, but did they give you the story of why they gave it the story to you? Like we talk about storytelling, right? The way that they used to teach the monks were through stories, and through that everything was passed through by a teacher who told the story. It wasn't written down. All the I want to say scriptures, but it's the prayers and stuff weren't really utilized to write, just like, here, read this, right? they
Right.
they they
They were told to people. They were basically as a
yeah,
story is what you're saying. Yeah.
but the story was because you studied under this person, which you became very close to, and you started to get like family, like you were in this community. And so, but if we think about all the information that we get on the internet, all the stuff that we start to take in, these things don't really have a deep root for us. We only have, oh, well, here's some information, it worked for a group of people, let's try it. And so then you
Yeah.
don't know, does this really sit into all the categories I need it to sit to make it my foundation? And when you start to push on something that doesn't have an equal amount of weight distribution in the foundation, you start to sink, right? And then you have this total frustration of purpose.
Yeah, knowing the history of things for me personally is really important, because then I know how to use it, and I know where it comes from, and I'll know what the purpose of it originally was. And that's important too.
Well, then you remember, was it Brian or was it Kyle? Someone said when you're reading research, what was the intention of the researchers, and what
Right.
were they thinking, and how are they?
What were their religious beliefs?
Yeah,
What were their political beliefs? That's important too, because then you get a better idea of where they were coming from. Because, and that's a great point. I can't even stress how important that is, because if you're, it's a some sense of, I mean, we're all kind of biased when we're talking about things, because we're talking about it from our perspective, right?
yeah.
So
I
you
mean,
can't really get
it's
away from that. But knowing where someone's coming from is much better for knowing whether you should be using it or not, or how you should be using it.
right. And, trial error has always been the way that, researchers were supposed to be. So we're all researchers of our own being. But when you don't have the ability to believe that what you know is true, because you're overshadowed by being kept in a society of belief that you are a part of them, you don't step outside your boundaries and go, okay, I'm going on my own, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Now think about, like, trying to leave home when you were 5 years old or something, I'm running away, right? And
Hmm.
what do you take with you? Your teddy bear or something, right? You have no energy. You have nothing
Right.
with you to cover
Right.
yourself. You have no experience of the life. And so there is no way of feeling confident in what you're doing. And so that whole idea of integrating your purpose is to know that these things are coming from all different sources, and you and your, like, knowing of your purpose has to be, is this really kind of serving me in a way that keeps me open to change? Yeah, because the change is
Yeah.
always happening. You're never going to stop it,
Right.
right?
Yeah. And being open yourself with that beginner's mindset that
Yeah.
Maddie talked about, I don't know how many episodes back, but that really stuck with me, because I was like, wow, yeah, that's kind of how we always need to look at things, instead of from a standpoint of what we know it all, because we don't,
No,
we
and we're
never know it all. Yeah.
no, and we could be off base on a lot of things because we take something and run with it, right? We run maybe too fast for what we ingest. Like, we take it in, like we eat our meal too fast,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You don't have time to really savor or take in what's happening while you're eating, or you're so
That
cognitively
reminds me,
distracted.
from a physical or physiological standpoint, like your brain actually integrates when you're able to know your purpose, right? Is that what you were saying yesterday?
Right. Like, so, like, I decide I want to go do something fun, whatever that is, right? I
Hmm.
want to do a handstand or right. But my body is saying, you haven't done this before. Okay, well, you're a kid, you have that ability to try and fall and be okay. As you get older, your body's going, man, we don't recover as well. If we let you do
Right.
that, you're going to hit your head, you're going to hurt yourself. Remember that woman that we saw hurt herself in that she was doing scorpion or something in that yoga class, and she cranked her neck. I can't remember what pose it was, but we were in that. It was in Atlanta,
Okay.
and we were at that place over by it's that yoga place upstairs, Stillwater.
Oh, yeah. That was a long time ago.
And do you remember that woman decided to try to do the headstand or whatever she did, and then she
Yeah.
collapsed on her head, and she was, in pain, and we were all leaving, and she's crying, and
Yeah.
we
I do remember.
felt for her.
Yeah.
Like, that is the body saying, no, 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 no. You don't have the energy, you don't have the skills. And so, from my point of view, you have to, your survival brain was telling her no, but her frontal brain was saying, oh, we can try this. You could help, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to try it.
Yeah.
And, but I kind of contribute that example as that integration of knowing when you're safe and how to do something takes time and skill. And
Hmm.
we talked about that with, going into martial arts, but you know you have to keep doing something over and over again to even get the body to say, yeah, we're good, you're fine, you can do this.
Yeah. You could
And
call
it's
it intuition also, right? I mean, it is developing that intuition over time, because that integration of the two parts of your brain develops that being able to follow an intuition that's going to be serving you in a way, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to say the gut feeling, or
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's the same kind of. Um, I I feel okay about this. I may not feel really. I still may have butterflies about it, but
Yeah.
something about me says, "Oh yeah, I feel like this is okay." Like I
Yeah.
know when I'm in a yoga class and then I'm feeling strong.
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes those
Headstand.
arm balances or whatever feel a little bit stronger, right? I feel good. I can hold it for a little bit.
Right.
But if I'm having a bad survival day, say I didn't sleep well or I didn't
Mm-hmm.
eat well
Well, there's a
or
lot neurologically that goes into those inversions too, and if you're not
oh
feeling right in every way, you shouldn't be doing it.
yeah. And that's what I consider is the integration part,
Yeah.
because that is why you got to be okay in a yoga class to be let other people fly, because they're
Yeah.
they're in a different place than you are,
Yeah.
you know.
Everybody is. Yeah. We're all in it, depending on the day, the hour, you name it.
Yeah, and your mat is your mat, like that's your space, and your focus is on you so that you can improve or just relax or whatever you need to do. And anybody else who's standing on their head twisted around into a pretzel, it may be so many factors that you don't have right now. Or
Enjoy and appreciate too, Hey, that's
yeah,
cool. They're doing that. That's awesome.
and
Maybe
and
I'll do
and
that one day.
and tomorrow maybe you've done these things but you're just having an off day,
Hmm.
like
Being a gymnast, that would happen all the time. People don't understand. Like, you're not going to be consistent on that kind of thing every day, and it just isn't going to happen. Sometimes you just have to say, "That's it for today. I don't have anything else. I'm done." Like, and that's okay.
yeah,
There'll
because if
be
you
another day.
and
Yeah,
every time I've been proven when I push myself I'm on my face or my butt
yeah,
and quicker than I thought, it's like all of a sudden I'm
yeah,
like, whoops, I didn't listen to that gut feeling that said not today.
yeah, yeah. But you learn after a while, don't you?
Yeah, and you learn to be exploratory but just kind of in a cautionary way.
Yeah,
But just think about like your emotional mess, then you throw yourself into an aversion. Hello.
yeah, yeah. That's no good, because again, we're talking about the neurological aspect, right?
The body's saying you're unsafe. I'm not letting you bust your head open and spinal collapse and
Yeah,
paralyzing if I can help it.
yeah, yeah.
And I kind of find that more and more I talk to people, I'm like, your body is a gift. It's telling you so many
Oh
things.
my
That
God.
that
It's
pain that
like
you're having, it's a gift.
absolutely like like Zachariah mentioned, that like people who don't have pain, that's a real issue. It's a
It
real
is.
problem. Yeah.
And the fact that we have the power to pull ourselves apart. Woo. You ever think
Yeah.
about that?
It is a
Like,
blessing, really, if you think about it. It's such a great signal for yourself, to know when you've gone too far or what your limits are in that moment. It's it's good to have. I always think about what Zachariah said when I
yeah.
when I think about pain now, and I'm like, wow, I'm pretty damn fortunate.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
people are masking it with drugs. Like, whoa, no, no, no,
yeah.
no.
My knee tells me when to stop. It's like, hey, we've had enough. We need to recover now, like, but I
Yeah.
also think as your body adjusts, and especially if you're going through any alignment stuff, like, you're going to have pain in different places just because your body's saying, slow down. We're trying to adjust here. We're trying to
Mm-hmm.
make this shift, and it's trying to slow you down a little bit because it can't do that when you're going fast all the time.
And
Yeah.
I think we talked about a little bit of this is that pain isn't necessarily an inhibitor in terms of like where it starts and where it goes and how it is communicating. So you can, do something to your vestibular, your vision, or something like that and reduce the threat and the pain goes down. And you don't have that, maybe your knee or something as much as you would had you not have done that. Like,
Right.
that whole, it's a system of checks and balances, I kind of think, where
Yeah.
you're basically, and we talk about this stacking the stresses and how those stresses are in your bucket and then the bucket gets too full, then your pain is heightened. but then maybe you do something to reduce that, and then you can do something that you thought you couldn't do because you were in pain.
Yeah, absolutely. Could be blood sugar would be a really good thing to do. It could be rest. It could be someone working on your body. It could be some kind of movement. It could be any of those things, right?
You gotta see what works for you, right?
Yeah,
Definitely.
exactly. Yeah.
Thanks, Allison. Good to
Oh,
see you
thanks.
again.
All right, Maya. Talk to you
All
soon.
right.
Bye.
All right. Bye.